All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Taxes and Retirement Live. Very excited. Got a super special guest tonight. You may recognize from Roger Whitney's Rock Retirement Club. Kevin Lyles, a.k.a. BW or Beachwalker from the club, is going to be on the show tonight. Sorry, I forgot to take off my intro screen there. So welcome again, Taxes and Retirement Live. Kevin Lyles, special guest tonight. I will introduce him shortly. Thank you all for joining. Let me just get the disclosure out of the way. This video is only general explanations and education. It is not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see in this video, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. Thank you. This will be my first time going live again with this new software with a special guest, so forgive me if it's a little clunky, but just like magic, hold on a second. Here we are. Kevin, can you see us?
I can. Hi, Andy.
Awesome. And check this out, Kevin. Here you go. I got your own custom nameplate here.
I want a copy.
So again, Kevin Lyles, retirement coach. He is the head coach and I believe head of education for the Rock Retirement Club. Kevin, can you just tell us? Actually, hold on. Before that, I got this dad joke thing, Kevin. Let me hit you with some of these, and for the crowd. And I understand you may have brought one of your own as well.
I did. I prepared.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. All right, first one, Kevin. 5/4 of people admit they're bad with fractions because that's greater than 1. How about that? It's like I always tell my kids, 66% of statistics are made up. And every time I say that, I change the number. They love it. All right. When you ask your dad if he's all right, he says, no, I'm half left. And finally, why was the big cat disqualified from the race? Any ideas, Kevin?
No, tell me.
Because he was a cheetah. which I thought about that, and if you're from New York, the area where I am, or Boston, you may not quite get that because yeah, he cheated.
Exactly.
Right. I was playing cards with Fitzy, and he's a cheetah. Anyway, so Kevin, you have a joke for us?
I do, and of course, my dad joke is about retirement. What do retirees call a long lunch?
What do retirees call a long lunch? I don't know.
Normal.
There you go. All right, that's something to aspire to, right? All right. So Kevin, if you can just, introduce yourself a bit, tell us what you do, how you got here.
Sure. Well, I had a legal career of about 30 plus years and retired at the age of 55. And after I retired, I was thinking about, well, how am I going to support the family for the rest of our lives? And so I decided to start studying retirement planning and got my CRPC designation. And then by that time, I was 6 months to a year into retirement, and I decided, you know what, the money stuff, I think I've got figured out now. It's the non-financial stuff that is really the issue. And I was a member at that time in the Rock Retirement Club.
Okay.
And learning a lot in there, and that helped me with the financial side, but I was really not struggling in retirement, but I realized I needed to grow. Sure. And so I studied and became a certified retirement coach, and then started doing that within the club. So Roger is the retirement planner and I'm the retirement coach. We have some other coaches as well. And that's been doing that. So I have 400 plus members that I work closely with on helping them rock retirement.
Okay. That's awesome. Fantastic. And just so everyone watching at home knows, comments are working. I can see them here. So, as you have a question for Kevin, special guest, just post it up there, and I can lay it on the screen here. For example, Facebook user gave a thumbs up. Here we go. So, Kevin, this is what you'll see when I throw your question your way.
Okay.
So, people, don't be shy. If you got something to ask Kevin, throw it in. And tonight's topic is retirement readiness and the softer, more kind of personal side of, mental, emotional side of preparing for retirement, right? Whereas I'm sort of the numbers and tax guy, I realize it's equally important, if not as important, more important to be mentally, emotionally prepared. That's your wheelhouse, right? So
that's right. My friend Mark Ross says the planners handle the money side of retirement. We handle the mission side of retirement. So.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So can you maybe, what does a retirement coach do? Whether this is what you do in the club or just in general, how would you explain?
Yeah. There are a lot of issues we cover that are really critical to retirement success. And let me just go over the big topics, and maybe we'll talk about them in future meetings.
Yeah, sure.
The first one is career and work. And really, you need to replace what you were getting from your job when you retire. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then, are you going to have a job in retirement? Are you going to work part-time, full-time, for money, volunteer? But working is an important part of life, and you've got to make those decisions.
Sure.
Second big question every retiree faces is, where are you going to live? You know, where you live while you're working is largely determined by your job for most of us. When you retire, you've got a choice. Do you want to stay there where you've probably got friends and family, or do you want to move to another area and really change things up? So that's a huge decision, as you know, has both financial and non-financial implications.
Yeah.
On the finance side, we don't deal with the retirement plan. What we deal with is the confidence in the retirement plan. In other words, you've got to be comfortable. You've got to sleep at night. Maybe that's the way to say it. And if you're not comfortable and you don't have confidence that you've got the money's going to last you for the rest of your life, then you're going to have problems in retirement. You're going to have a lot of stress you don't need.
Sure.
The two that people always think about are leisure and hobbies, right? That's what you think about going into retirement, and they're very important, but they take on a different aspect in retirement. So we talk about that as retirement coaches, is what are you going to do for leisure activities? What are you going to do for hobbies? Are those hobbies going to become more like your vocation in retirement, or are they going to stay as hobbies? So those kinds of things. Social, you know, when you leave work, you leave a lot of your work colleagues behind, and you may stay in touch, but it's never the same. And as you go through and age in retirement, you lose social connections for various reasons. People move around a lot. People unfortunately pass away. You need to keep building those social networks. And that's one of the key facts for longevity, is having strong social connections. So that's an area we deal with. Another one that's obvious is health and wellness. You know, I think everyone who retires goes on a diet, starts exercising more, and it just, you start thinking more about your own mortality. And so you start thinking about, well, how can I extend it? And, right. You know, the concept being, you're not so much trying to add years to your life, you're trying to add life to your years and making sure that as you age, you can do it productively, and you can get around and do what you want. So it's health and wellness are big areas. Another big one's family relationships. You know, especially if you and your spouse have been working, both of you, and you retire around the same time, now you're together 24/7. And it puts a lot of strain. We have a lot of divorces. We have a lot of depression around retirement, and it's because of the strain on those relationships. So that's something coaches do, is really deal with how do you do that. And other family members, it doesn't have to be a spouse, you know, your own children, your relationship changes once you've retired. And then there's grandparenting, you know, the beauty of retirement. I'm not there yet. We're, our youngest son got married this year, so I know my wife's very anxious and is dropping hints all the time, but grandparenting is a great part of retirement, and that's something we deal with. So those are some of the big areas that we cover. And then special issues of singles. You know, if you retire and you're single, and a lot of people are, and then a lot of people become single through that divorce, those divorce numbers I talked about, as well as deaths of a spouse, you have a lot of unique issues. And that's another area that we deal with as retirement coaches.
Yeah. And just from this relatively, what looks to be a relatively small list of things, you can tell how massive, right, all this will go and what the implications are of this. Even quick little personal story, the social connection, for example. So I'm not retired per se, but I left a nearly 20-year career working in working in Midtown Manhattan and high-rise buildings with lots of people around, working at really big companies, you know, hundreds of people on my floor or whatever. Always around and socializing, and sat next to, you know, a bunch of people within stone's throw of me. That all stopped. You know, that was my whole career. I stopped to start my own business, working predominantly from home by myself. Here I am. That's hard. That was an adjustment to go from every day, the water cooler banter, and that is so much of your social connection. Now, granted, I still have my friends locally and whatever, but I miss it. That the socialization is what I miss about my old, not much else, but the socialization is a huge part of it. And I can see how that's a serious issue that needs to be addressed prior to pulling the ripcord and walking out your last day, of retirement.
Yeah. 2020 gave a lot of people sort of a peek into retirement, didn't it? But, at least what you're doing is you're out there, you're doing these kinds of things. So you're talking to people, you're talking to clients. Imagine if there were no clients anymore and no people you're talking to. So you really need to take the initiative in retirement and generate those social connections.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a interesting, related comment. Apologies, we don't see most people's names here, so I'll just generically say user, but at 62, thinking whether if I should take the retirement package being offered by my company, 3 months of pay at the end of first quarter. It isn't the money that concerns me, but the lack of a well-defined plan as to what I will do in retirement. How common is this question, Kevin?
It's extremely common. The only part that's not common is money's not concerning me, because money's concerning most. So you're fortunate, Facebook user. But look, I entered retirement without really knowing. I didn't have a plan to become a retirement planner or a retirement coach. I knew I would want to do something. I was retiring fairly young and had some ideas. This wasn't one of them. So I sort of found my way after I retired, and you can too. But as we'll talk about here in a few minutes, the more you can plan and think about it, and I'll try to give you some ideas and some thoughts that might help you to think about what you might want to do.
Okay. And, follow-up comment, I don't know if this is from the same person, but don't retire until you at least think you know what you want to do.
Yeah, and that's great advice. Although, as we've dealt with in the Rock Retirement Club this year, a lot of people lost their jobs this year, so they didn't have a choice.
Right.
We did a whole series of meetups on that with people who had lost their job this year due to, COVID causing the company to go down.
Sure. And it's kind of hokey sounding, but I think it's perfectly exactly appropriate. Is you have to make sure you're not retiring away from something, but retiring to something.
I love that formulation. Yeah, that's right.
Don't just leave your job because you hate it. Because if you've been running full steam for 40 years and quit cold turkey, that could be a real unpleasant shock to the system, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people, one common method is, hey, I'm just going to do nothing for 3 months, 6 months and unwind. If you've been in a really stressful job, like you say, sort of jet setting on, a lot of travel, maybe you just need to decompress before you make decisions. I always hear that the standard advice from financial planners after a spouse dies is don't make any major financial decisions in that first year till you figure out who you're going to be and what you want out of life. It's sort of the same thing with the retirement transition, is you need to figure that out. But I do think there's a lot of planning you can do to help you along the way.
Okay. So this may be, this question gets ahead of things a little bit, but here's an interesting comment from Brenda. You become busier after retirement. I'm not sure why.
It's because everything expands. It takes you 2 hours to do what you used to spend 10 minutes to do. I can tell you, Brenda.
My father said the same. He retired a couple of years ago, and he worked full time up until he retired, and he would still cut the grass when he got home at night. He would still, go to the store. He'd still do whatever other errands and maintenance and stuff. He stopped working, and he thought he'd have all this time, but his time's filled up. Like, he's cutting the grass still. He's like, where's all this time go? I have 40, 50 hours extra per week, but I'm still always busy. I don't get it.
When I was practicing law, my calendar was done in 15-minute increments, and I might have 30, 40 things on a day to do. Now in retirement, if I have 3, I can barely get them done. And if I have 4, I feel stressed out. So,
right. All right. So this one, I guess we can go a lot of ways, but what have been some successful strategies? Maybe just kind of, pick one of the bullets we hit on before and talk about that perhaps.
Yeah, well, let's start with the 5 functions of work and the need to replace those, because I think that's where every retiree, you're retiring from a career or at least a job that you've had for some period of time. So what's that job provide you? And therefore, you're thinking about what holes do you need to fill in retirement. In fact, I'm going to do an Andy here. The
Ooh, there you go.
functions. Let's see if I can get this in here. The 5 functions of work.
There it is. Yep.
There, I got it. I've seen you do that. I was impressed. So I wanted
it took a lot of practice to finally, figure out where the center of the camera is.
So the first one a job gives you is it gives you a salary, right? That's the first one everyone thinks of, and it gives you some financial stability. What you're doing in retirement is you're taking that salary you had, that's going away. You need to go from compensation to a retirement paycheck. Mm-hmm. And that's where someone like you comes in, Andy, to help them figure out, how am I going to pay my bills in retirement? How do I create an income stream? Yeah. So that's, and as I talked earlier, it's about having confidence in that plan, that it's going to be enough to meet your needs and it's going to last you for the rest of your life, however long that is. If we all knew our expiration date, it would be a lot easier to plan for, wouldn't it? Sure, yeah. So that's one. The second one, though, and this is the one that really gives people a lot of trouble, is time management. A job gives us structure to our days. We normally get up, hopefully we work out, have a little breakfast, get cleaned up, commute to work back in the olden days, right? In 2019, right, yeah. You go to work. And a job gave us structure, and then we would come home, we would have dinner, blah, blah, blah. Well, now you're retired, your calendar's empty. You don't have structure your day. You don't have to wake up at any particular time. So you need to create structure to your day. And that's, as I'm coaching people, that's what I really try to get people to do, is don't just let your day get filled up. Plan for how you want your day to be filled up. Create some structure in it. Some people need more structure than others. I know someone that said, if I've got 4 hours open, I don't know what to do with myself. Other people cherish having 4 hours open to just be. Right. And so it's time management. Okay. The next one is sense of utility. And this is probably the most important one, because a job adds purpose and meaning to our lives. And we need to have that in retirement. That's where when retirements fail, I'm seeing something strange on the screen here. Are you seeing it okay? Yeah, that happened last week. It should go away shortly. Okay. Looks like we're still running live. So sounds like we're good. Yeah. So here we go. Your job gives us that purpose and meaning. And so without a job, we need to create our own purpose and meaning. And that's something we'll talk about in another session sometime, is how do you do that? But it's really important that you have that. Socialization, we talked about a little bit. You talked about leaving, you were in a high rise. So you had lots and lots of work colleagues, all those friends and relationships that a job gives you. And I can tell you, during our career, 90% of our friends were work friends. Right. It just that we were very busy, and that's who we hung out with after work. So that's going to change. Now, we still make time, and that's an important thing to do, to continue to see those people, get together, but you're not going to do it on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So you need to add friends and add that to your life. And then the final thing a job gives you is status or significance. And it's really a sense of identity. It's who you are. If you're a police officer, that's who you are. And that's very important to you. And when you retire, that goes away. So you need to develop a sense of identity. You may become a different person in retirement. Yeah. You might want to become grandfather of the year. You might want to be a master gardener. You might want to be a marathon runner. Yeah. You might want to cure cancer, do cancer research, whatever it is. If it has meaning to you, it'll give you a sense of personal worth. So those 5 things are really something every retiree should think about. How am I going to fill those 5 functions that work fills for us? Yeah. Now, would you go so far as to say, don't retire until you've addressed those? Now, obviously, if it's within your control, if you're laid off or pushed out the door, different story. But it sounds like it's that important that this should be alongside with your financial retirement plan to have these things addressed, correct? Yeah, I think it's best. I think the ideal is to have some thoughts about it, but it's one of those things until you're retired, you don't know who you're going to be.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like you face it, I'm sure, as a retirement planner, trying to help people decide how much money are you going to spend in retirement, right? You look at your budget while you're working and you say, well, you're not going to have to pay Social Security taxes any longer. Yeah. We can take that out. Maybe not as much commuting expenses. You have those kinds of issues, but you never really know until your clients are retired a couple years. Sure. How many vacations are they going to take? How much leisure spending are they going to do? And it's sort of like that on some of these softer issues. Until you're retired, you don't know what you're going to want to do. You don't know who you're going to be necessarily. And look, it's retirement isn't a destination. It's the start of the race is the way I look at it. So yes, ideally you do as much planning as you can and thinking about it, but I don't have a problem with anyone who says, I need to get out of this job now, either because they're telling me to, they're kicking me out, or I'm just, it's too much and I need to get out. I'm going to figure it out later. I think you can manage that.
Okay. Interesting sort of related comment from even before, we started on this particular topic. Even if you have a post-retirement plan, be ready for it to change. You never know when an opportunity such as job, hobby, volunteering will pop up that interests you. And I think that correlates well with the financial planning. Life's going to change. You're planning for 30 or more years, and it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to predict what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but you have to realize you need to be agile is the great word. Flexible, kind of roll with the punches as life happens, as financial markets do what they do, whatever. The softer side, same thing, right? Like it's good to spec out what you think you want your retirement to be, but who knows? Life has funny ways of manifesting itself.
Yeah, the way that comment reads is a perfect way to say it. As a retirement coach, we look at a number of retirement success factors that will tend towards a successful retirement. And one of the big ones is adaptability. Mm-hmm. And that's coming in here. How do you react to change? Does change cause you unusual stress, or do you just roll with the punches, take advantage of new? And, this is talking about new opportunity. Life will also present you with new challenges. Right. And some negative things. And again, how do you adapt? How do you react to those? That's what's going to be key to a successful retirement.
Yeah. Realize your plans will change, good, bad, or indifferent, unfortunately. Right.
Man plans, God laughs, right?
Couple questions about handouts, some of them with LOLs after them, but any way you'd be able to share some of these things afterward? I understand if they're proprietary to other sources.
No, I'll send you a copy of that chart and you can post it in the site.
Okay, great. Thank you. I guess slightly off topic from the item we were just discussing, but I think super important. Gray divorce. That's I think that's a term for it. So what are some reasons there are a lot of divorces after retirement? Is there too much micromanagement? Is it too much time to I don't know, to fool around? I'm not sure.
I'm going to get in trouble with my gender, but it's just too much husband in a lot of.
Yeah.
I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. That's the retirement coach joke.
Wow.
No, if you think about it, and again, it's very different. It's stressful regardless of whether both spouses were working or just one was. Yeah. So let's take the situation. My wife had retired 20 some years ago, basically when our kids were born.
Okay.
And so the home was her domain. Now she does things out of the home, so she's very independent, but I knew when I retired, I can't just hang around the house all day. So if I have nowhere to go, I get out of there. I feel like, this will be best for our marriage. Too much of me, I know, is not a good thing. But so that's one. If you're both working and you both retire at the same time, one thing that causes a lot of problems is the two partners have very different ideas of an ideal retirement.
Okay.
One is exhausted and wants to hit the couch and relax and unwind. The other is ready to start out on a world adventure.
Yeah. Right.
And if you haven't, and that's when we talk about the changing relationships with spouses, one of the things we do and the part of planning you need to do is have these conversations with your spouse, before retirement. If there are spouses who don't want the other spouse to retire, they're so worried about, well, he or she's going to be home all day and in my kitchen or in my workshop. That's, I don't like that. So have those conversations.
Is that more common than we may think it is? People know there may be some friction, maybe some issues, and just kind of put their head in the proverbial sand about it and hope for the best when retirement starts?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And usually there is a lot of stress around retirement. So if you're the person who's retiring, you already are under a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I'll attack the male gender here. We tend to internalize, and we don't share that stress with our spouse.
Okay.
We don't say, oh, I'm really worried about what I'm going to do in retirement, how I'm going to keep busy. Am I going to have any friends? And so by internalizing that, you're not communicating with your spouse.
Right.
And that becomes the problem. It's gray divorce is the term. I mean, it is the highest divorce percentage of any age group is the post 60 divorce.
Yeah. I read that a handful of months ago in Investment News or something. That statistic, I didn't realize that. I know obviously divorce rates aren't favorable, but particularly among.
You think about it. It is a time of life when it changes at the maximum.
Yeah,
you're leaving your career, so that's the huge change. Your children are usually leaving the nest. That's a huge change. Your parents are probably getting up there and starting to either die or decline in health. And it's just an extremely stressful time.
Yeah.
And then you take two spouses who were on top of the world in their career, and now they're thrown in the house together with nothing to do.
Right.
So now we're being very negative here, Andy, and I don't like that because I think retirement is the most wonderful time of life.
It is, yes. And just one quick comment on the topic, June Lee, too much togetherness, ?
Exactly.
Sounds like, unfortunately, yes. All right. Here's a big one. I think is definitely important, more from the financial mindset, I guess. But how do you get out of the mindset of continuing to save? So another sort of hokey analogy, but while you're working and saving, building the nest egg, that's the accumulation stage. You're going up the mountain, building, saving. Top of the mountains, you retire. Well, guess what? You still have to get down the mountain. Getting down is as important as getting up. And getting down is decumulating, or in most people's cases, actually having to spend from your assets, which after 60 plus years of constantly being a saver, watching your baby, watching this nest egg grow, now not only is it not growing, but you're taken from it. Thoughts on that? How to address that?
It's absolutely a huge issue. Retirement planners, they did a survey of retirement planners and asked them to cite the top two concerns of their retired clients. Number one, wanting a real purpose in retirement. Number two, feeling free to spend what they had worked so hard to earn over their lifetimes. It's a huge issue. And the problem is because we don't know how long we're going to live. Yeah. So do you take people often look at the mortality tables. And I think right now for a 65-year-old, it's around 83, 84, somewhere in there. Well, that's the average. You shouldn't plan to be average, should you? You ought to hope and expect to do much better than that. And so you're planning for a really indefinite period. So it's tough. It's where having a good retirement planner can give you some of that confidence we talked about in your plan so that you're able to spend it.
Right. Another sort of comment about the unknowns. The hardest part is to plan for the unknowns, especially if you are a passive type A personality. So you want to plan, you want to know, you want things to be black and white and mapped out. It's got to be quite the adjustment, right?
It sure is. And just, retirement seems the opposite of type A. right? As a type A, you're frenetic in your activity. You're always pursuing a goal and you have no downtime. Well, retirement, you're just thrown in and now you have nothing to do. So that's part of this planning. And it's really the message I wanted to talk about tonight. So let's jump right in.
Do it.
I titled it. I didn't title it. I stole this title, Retirement Reimagined. It's from a book by Dr. Terry Nyhus, and it's called Retirement Reimagined, From Ordinary to Extraordinary. And I love that subtitle, From Ordinary to Extraordinary, because if you think about your career and your life as ordinary, and that's not to mean negative, that's not a negative connotation. It's just that's your ordinary life. Well, guess what? In retirement, with some planning, it can become extraordinary because you're not burdened by all the things that your career burdens you by. And so that's really what I wanted to talk to your audience about tonight is, first of all, you said 30 years, and I love that because that's sort of what we all say. But, when you think about a period of 30 years, and quite honestly, the way longevity is going, it may be 40.
Yeah.
Right. This may be the longest period of your life. If you're married, it's most certainly going to be the longest period of your married life together, or hopefully it will, let's say.
I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's an interesting tidbit.
And, if you think back, I think back to my parents, retirement was a completely different thing. It was, by the time you quit work, you didn't have too much life left in you. And I don't mean necessarily years. I just mean you were tired, you were older, even though chronologically you're the same age as we are retiring today, perhaps, but it was just different. And you didn't expect to live 30 or 40 years. And you didn't expect to have a lot of contributions after that to life. And so what you need to do is you need to really plan for what do you want to accomplish. I think goals are so important to retirees. You can't just let life happen. 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is way too long a period of your life to just let whatever happens. So I want you to be very proactive about it. I want you to plan for what you want to do. You ought to have, just like you did, I'm sure, during your career, what's your 1 year goals? What's your 3 year goals? What's your 5 and 10? Where do you want your career to go? Well, now it's where do you want your life to go? And like I say, retirement's not a destination. It's just the start of an adventure. And if you think about it that way and you plan for it that way, it really can be that.
Yeah. Okay. So make a plan. Yeah.
Make a plan, have goals, think about what's important to you, and work those things into your life. You're going to have so much more freedom in retirement. If you think about it, you've never had this freedom at any time in your life. When you were, before you got out of school, your parents dictated where you lived, what you did, where you went, all those kinds of things. Now you have freedom to decide that yourself. You have freedom to decide whether you're going to work. If so, how much, what you're going to do. I think it's very healthy for retirees to give up their prior field and do something entirely new. Maybe it's a passion you had earlier in life that it was the road you didn't go down. Well, now you can go back and maybe do that again if you want to do something. If you're not looking to actually have a job and work, maybe it's a volunteer activity that you want to pursue and try to make a real difference.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be very meaningful and personal to you and something that you want to build your life around and do. And if you think of those things and plan for those things, the message we got earlier about opportunities will show up. You'll be amazed at how many opportunities you have in retirement because now you have the freedom to pursue almost anything.
Yeah. I think that's an important mindset is retirement doesn't need to be the traditional, you work 40 years full time, you stop, you get your pat on the back and gold watch and you hang out or whatever. Reframe it as retirement is freedom of time, freedom of choice. If you want to work, great. If that brings you happiness and fulfillment and a sense of purpose and social connection, as long as you're doing it because you want to do it on your terms, fantastic. If you instead want to volunteer, great. If you want to go start a bagel shop or something, right? Retirement's different things to different people, but I think the common denominator, again, freedom of choice, freedom of time. That's really what you're aiming for, right?
That's exactly right. And, it can provide a little extra income to give you a little more confidence in your financial plan. I like to talk about when I take on a project that's going to make me a certain amount of money, I like to assign that money to a specific thing, or not thing. It's usually a specific experience. We're taking our kids to Hawaii next year.
Okay.
That's something that, I can assign this money to that. Well, what a great way to spend some time in retirement, to be able to take your kids and your family somewhere that they want to go. Yeah. But you hit on the other ones, the social connections you get from any part-time job, the sense of utility, the time management, all those 5 functions we talked about earlier. Even working 10 hours a week, you can help fill that void if it's there. Doesn't have to be. I'm not saying everyone needs to do this. I'm just saying if you want to do it, it really solves a lot of the issues you have with having a successful retirement.
Sure.
I got a haircut today just for this Facebook Live session, Andy. And
you look dapper.
The lady that was cutting my hair, I'm down in Florida. She was a snowbird. She comes down to Florida in the winter from Wisconsin and cuts hair, but only does it 3 days a week so she can go visit her sister in the Keys. What a great life in retirement, right? She's keeping up her skills she had during her career,
right?
And still living life and enjoying it. And a little bit of extra money in retirement, it's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that.
And free from the shackles of working 40, 50 hours a week because she has to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Quick, maybe a bit of a sidetrack, but I thought this was a good one, so I want to get it up here before I skip over it. Sitting right on the fence. I love my job, but also would like more time off. This is a big one. How do you know when it's time to pull the trigger?
First, you ask Andy, and he'll tell you if you can. No, I think what is great is where you are is it possible to cut back on the amount you're working? You say you want more time off. One of the benefits, I think, of the work from home over the last year is employers have learned flexibility. And let's be honest, a lot of businesses are down, and therefore having someone cut hours might actually be a good thing for the business. You may just want to stay on enough hours to keep your skills sharp, keep your health benefits, whatever, but then you can sort of ease your way into retirement. So I like that idea.
Okay. Here's another interesting one, I guess along same lines perhaps. Could you propose a deceleration plan at work to get the best of both, right?
That's what we did.
Glide into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me just
and I can tell you, by the way, I've heard several stories from our members in the club of people who've done just that. Occasionally those stories, no, the employer said no, but more often employers are saying yes to those kind of plans now. So
yeah. And there's a few people ask about the club. So we'll save some time at the end. We'll figure, typically these run about an hour. So 10, 15 minutes or so. We'll carve out some time just to discuss that and how people can, get in touch with you if they want to after this. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. All right. A handful of other comments here. We'll leave them batched up. But, more on Retirement Reimagined that you'd like to run through?
Well, I'd go over what makes a successful retirement. Five traits.
Yep.
Positive emotion, having a positive attitude about life, about retirement, about aging. Those are the big ones you've got. Engagement. And this is what I say, you need to get involved in something. It certainly doesn't have to be a job, but it needs to be something that is meaningful to you and that gets you in gear, that you're committed to, that you have goals around. Having that engagement. Meaning or purpose, that's the big one. You need to have a sense of fulfillment based on what you're doing every day. A sense of accomplishment. achieving something. That's where jobs are good for that, right? We get evaluations, we get compensation increases, we get attaboys. That's a sense of accomplishment. You need to have that in retirement. Maybe it is winning, the largest potato at the county fair. You can tell I'm from Ohio. But it's some sense of accomplishment and getting that. And then finally, and the most important, is positive relationships. You need to get rid of toxic relationships. I deal with folks sometimes who have lost their job, and often as a result of, a plant closure or something like that. And too often they're getting together with their former colleagues and sort of having a bitch session,
right?
Just griping about what they hated about the company, how they were mistreated. That's not healthy for you. Have healthy relationships. Have people that encourage you about the next step in life.
Yeah. Now, how do people work towards those? So, someone has this list in hand. Okay, positive attitude. Sure, I can control that. Do something engaging. Sure, easy enough to control. Meaning and purpose. People can probably figure that out. Positive relationships. That's a tough one in all stages of life. So what do you recommend to people who, I guess, twofold? Either they don't know they have a bunch of toxicity around them, or they do and not quite sure what to do with it because it's their friend from 50 years, right? So how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, the first thing you do is you look in the mirror and make sure you're not the source of the toxicity. Okay. Right. And you'd be surprised at how many people who are their own worst enemies.
But do they not know it when that's the case, though?
Oh no, they think their anger, their resentment, their hostility is entirely warranted, right, and appropriate for whatever the situation was. And it's just not. Whether it is warranted or not doesn't matter. It's unhealthy to you, and it probably will keep you from having some of those positive relationships. But to answer your question, if you have a friend who is that way, is negative about everything, well, as a friend, you should try to help them change their attitude, right? That's part of being a friend. But if that doesn't happen, at some point you have to sever those ties. Doesn't have to be a formal declaration. We are no longer friends, right, but you need to stop spending time with that person. You need to make excuses when they want to get together, and get together with a group of people who will add to your life and not detract from it.
Yeah. And I guess this will depend where you live and, I don't know, networks and things around you, but how do you go about doing that? How do you foster, build social connections that otherwise happen just organically from being at work? Presumably you go after your hobbies or common interests or things like that, or does it really all depend what works for you?
Absolutely. If you go do the kinds of activities that you most enjoy, you'll find other people with common interests. One thing I found in retirement, and it surprised me a little, is how easy it is to make friends. You might think, well, but you don't have as much connections or reasons to be together. But guess what? All the other retirees are in the same boat. Yeah. And so I find people very receptive to forming friendships. I picked up, since I moved to Florida, pickleball, the sport of retirees in Florida now. It's overtaking tennis courts are being paved under for pickleball courts in Florida. But I have a group of friends I play with, and you get to know them, and then you go do other things. And so I find retirees a very receptive group to do that. Another thing are the over 55 retirement communities. Those are people who have moved into an area because they want to develop new relationships and activities, and everyone who moves there has the same objective in mind. So yeah. I find it to be easier than you would think, but you do have to get out of the house and go do things.
Right. You got to put in the effort. Yeah. It's funny about pickleball. So yes, playing pickleball is great, healthy, fun, meet many good people. And I've noticed in clients I work with, when I was in high school in the 90s, pickleball was one of the electives in gym. Outside of that, I've never once seen or heard of pickleball until the last couple of years. Seems to be increasing exponentially in popularity. And I guess to your point, it's taken over.
Yeah. So, well, I would think it ought to be required sport for a retirement planner.
Yeah. Let's see, just looking what else here. Handful of comments. There's a funny comment here about cleaning the house. Where was it? Okay. I thought my house would be cleaner, but it ends up that it wasn't my job. That was the issue. I like that.
Yeah, we do learn about ourselves in retirement. We have more time to reflect on our own flaws.
Yeah. Okay. Here's something that's probably fairly common. What if all your friends are still working? I don't live in a retirement community, so I'm concerned that there will be no one to play with.
Yeah, and that's part of needing to figure out what new activities you're going to add to your life that's going to replace work.
Yeah.
A tip about your old work friends: I still get together at lunch with my old work friends who are still working. We still will do a golf trip every now and then. This past year has been a little difficult, but we actually managed to get one trip in. Everyone wearing masks, but we at least got to see each other.
Right.
So that's those friends. But what you really need to focus on, I think, as a retiree is what are your new activities going to be and who are your new friends going to be from those?
Okay.
And that's how you do it. You don't get rid of your old friends. They fade and become less important, and you get new ones.
Right. This question's a little specific to international, but I anecdotally, it seems like it's a more common trend. So people retiring overseas, you don't really have any network. You may even have issues with the language. Mexico, for example, any unique ideas for being abroad and building a network?
Yeah, hopefully you're somewhere near a pretty good expat network of people. I mean, the way most people do go overseas where other Americans have gone, and because that's how they heard about this is a great area. So you can get together with them. Again, don't just cling to the old, though. Embrace the new. And so learn the language, learn the traditions in Mexico, get together with Mexicans and as I have.
Yeah. Just quickly, let's wrap up on pickleball. So Jane Nadler asking, what is pickleball? It's just like a less intense tennis, right? Is that a way to put it?
It is tennis on a smaller court. The ball is a wiffle ball, so it doesn't bounce as fast and as hard, but it's a great sport for retirees or non-retirees. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I play with our children and really enjoy it.
Cool. And I guess it's a bit of a misnomer because there's no pickles involved, unfortunately, right?
There are no pickles. Although my son and his wife have a pickleball shirt with a big dill pickle they had put on the t-shirt. So
yeah, there you go. Comment, I have not wanted to move into a retirement community because I feel like the diversity of different age groups and being around younger people. So interesting sort of personal story. My mother, also in New Jersey, considering moving to Arizona to one of the, I don't know if it's over 55. There's different kinds, right? There's over 55, over 62. Right. I'm not sure, but she looked at a few different communities, and that was one of her concerns. She'd be on the very young end of the typical people there. So she's trying to sort of, shop around and find somewhere with a slightly smaller or lower average age. Advice or recommendations for alternatives or what to do here?
I feel like this listener, a retirement community right now doesn't appeal to me either. So maybe if you like being around younger people, maybe a college town, if you want to move at all. I mean, you don't have to move. As we mentioned earlier, it's a huge decision. There's lots of aspects to it. But if you want diversity of age, move to a college town. In most cases, a lot of state universities, you can audit classes for free if you're over 60. Go onto a college campus. You'll be with younger people. That'll keep you young. And I like the diversity of different age groups as well. Although now in Florida, it's harder to find than when I was in Ohio. Just it tends to be, right. Especially this time of year, it's an older population. But I know what you mean. And retirement communities not for everyone, but the people who do like retirement communities love them. I mean, for some people, it's the ideal solution. They just rave about it.
Is it like going on cruises? You either love cruises or hate them. There's no one that's in between about cruises.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're a cruising family. We like to go on cruises, but I know people that no chance am I going to be on a boat for all day and night. So,
I guess kind of related thought to this retirement community. The other thing that is healthy is to socialize with all age groups. I also think it's important to keep up with the latest technologies as a way to keep up with the times.
absolutely. I completely agree. That's one of the things we do in the Rock Retirement Club is we have technology lessons.
Okay.
This year's it was real important, right? Everyone had to learn. My wife's grandmother, who is 104, learned how to do FaceTime. We could no longer be with her in person. And so, but yeah, I think that's important. It's important for, number one, it'll make your life a lot easier if you can do it. But two, it's how you feel about yourself. And if you feel like you're outdated and you can't manage to get onto a computer or whatever the newest technology is, then you're not going to have a healthy feeling about yourself. One good thing to do, and this was something we did a grandparenting session with some of our retirees, and they said, well, that's how I get my grandkids to come over, is I'll have them come over and help me reset the DVR. I guess DVRs are even a thing of the past now. I'm dating myself.
They'll help me rewind my VHS tapes.
Yes.
Let me turn this around on you briefly. So, you're walking this walk. You've been there. You're going through it. We think, what's the best way to phrase this? I guess, what's the best and worst part about your retirement, or even like, what did you find the most unexpected, or just kind of in going through the journey?
Sure.
What's your take on it?
The best part to me is I have to do very little that I don't want to do.
Okay.
I mean, quite honestly, if you think about, and some people are more fortunate than others, but there obviously are parts of everyone's jobs they don't like. If I don't like it now, I don't do it for the most part. I mean, other than, there are some family obligations and household chores, but to me, it's that freedom we talked about. And I'm still learning. I'm not graduated yet into retirement. I'm still learning. And I really do have a vision that I'm going to be a different person 5 years from now than I am today. And I'm trying to direct my life in a way that gets me to where I think I want to go. But I'm open to new opportunities and ideas.
Yeah, cool. And what did you find? What were you most surprised by, or didn't expect?
We touched on it earlier. I expected to have a lot more free time. And I find that I'm busier than I thought I would be. But when I reflect on it, it really is, things expand how much time you give them. You go to a lunch with a friend, you're not back at the office in 45 minutes. You take an hour and a half or 2 hours to do that. So it's not a bad thing, but it did surprise me that, like I say, if I schedule 3 things in a day, my day is completely full. And so it's just, I don't know if the tasks expand to fill the time that you have to do them, but I thought I would have a lot more free time. And I've found I have to manage my time a little bit better to not feel that I'm missing out on free time.
Right. Quick, fairly technical question about, tech lessons. So let me bring this up. Joined late. Apologize. I really wish I could better support my parents as they increase their tech skills. There are a whole host of entertainment, educational, and social resources if I can help them. I am working and just can't take their calls on the fly. That said, I know someday my technical skills will be antiquated and I will need the same assistance. Again, pretty particular, but any sort of recommendations for resources or places to go for people who want to learn or build their tech skills?
Go to the Genius Bar at an Apple store. That's where I go when I need help because I'm an Apple person. I know one of the things we touch on in the club, and I don't have any at the ready because it's not been an issue I've dealt with much, but there are a lot of sort of online resources for technical help and things. And so maybe if your parents are at least, using Google, maybe point them towards that. And maybe it's to talk to them to make it sort of a challenge for them. In other words, you can figure that out, Mom, and let them do it and get a sense of accomplishment from it. But nothing comes to mind other than that.
Okay. Another sort of where to go for help one, and I missed this comment earlier. I was just scrolling through. My, sister is having a hard time figuring out what she will do if and when she retires. I've tried to make suggestions without much success. Any thoughts on how we can help her? She's in her 60s.
I do, and one of the things I do with coaching clients is we talk about the 6 life arenas: career and work, family, relationships, and those relationships, we're talking friends, non-family relationships, self, devoting time to yourself, spiritual, and leisure. So those are 6 areas that almost anything you do can be put into those 6 areas. Well, if you do that in a pie chart now, for a lot of people before they retire, work may be 70%, 80%. I've had people tell me it's 90%. So have your sister create a pie chart with those 6 life arenas and set the percentages where she wants them to be. Okay, so maybe career and work, you're going to cut down from 80% to 30%. Maybe you're going to take family from 15% to 30%, but do those 6 for you so that it makes sense for you where you want to spend your life. And then it will become obvious. And then you choose activities in each of those areas that you need to either give up or add. That's a good way to go about it, I think.
Okay. And that's great advice. So, it sounds like my screen's a little glitchy, but hopefully you still see me here. You do need to be methodical about this, right? You do need to actually plan, have a construct for how you approach, how you want your retirement to look like. Even if it's a pie chart, that sounds very corporate, but sounds exceptionally functional and helpful in this exercise, right?
Yeah. And, Roger Whitney says, dream big. And I think that's important. It's why I like that Retirement Reimagined book, From Ordinary to Extraordinary. Yeah. Allow yourself to think, what is the best life you can imagine? Because a lot of the attributes of that kind of life don't cost you a penny. So your financial plan doesn't matter. Obviously, some things you might want cost money, so you have to work with your planner and figure that out. But most of what's important in life really doesn't have to cost a lot of money. My wife and I had a wonderful trip through Nevada and Utah doing the national parks. I think it's called the Great Five in Utah. And we spent almost a month out there a couple summers ago, and what a great trip. And it's spiritual, it's healthy, it was just a wonderful trip. So think about what is an ideal life and really dream big, and then figure out how to get as close to that as you can.
Right. Good. And so we're getting towards 9 o'clock here. Maybe now, if you can just, we've mentioned the club, Roger Whitney. If you can just sort of, talk more about what that is, what you do there, what Roger's thing is.
Sure. The Rock Retirement Club. And if you want to learn about it, rockretirementclub.com. It is an online community of people, basically 5 years away from retirement to 5 years into retirement would probably be 80 to 90% of the members. And we have a lot of educational resources. There's a lot of financial tools to help you build your retirement financial plan. Yeah. And then the best part of it is just the community. It's learning from each other. It's finding someone who, if you're a year away from retirement, finding someone who retired last year and being able to pick their brains. So it's the forums and being able to communicate.
Yeah. And your involvement in that?
So I do a lot of these kinds of private meetups there with people on a lot of these topics we've talked about. A lot of it, the financial topics, building your bucket strategy and implementing it, but whatever. So those are the kinds of topics, but on the non-financial side, everything we've talked about tonight, I've done hour-long sessions on each one of them in the club where members can ask questions. And quite honestly, it's not me talking so much as it's getting other people to talk and share.
Right.
And you'd be amazed in an hour how many good ideas you can get on each one of these subjects, because you've got 50 people participating who have been there.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know, Roger Whitney, he's a retirement planner in Dallas, Fort Worth area. He's got a fantastic podcast called The Retirement Answer Man, one of my top few favorites, and started up this membership Rock Retirement Club 3 years ago at this point, I guess, right? Thereabout.
Yeah, that's right.
So you don't work for Roger per se. You're a moderator / member. I don't know what you call it, overseer of the club, but you're not part of his advisory business or anything like that. Right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm just in the club, and they call me head of education. That's more silly than anything. But yeah, what I do is I sort of curate good articles on all of these topics, both financial and non-financial. Bring that in for discussion with members. That's part of my role there. Or, when a member has a question, how you spend all day, I'm sure, because I read your tax answers. You must spend 8 to 10 hours a day answering. Your answers are so great.
Thank you.
We try to do that in the club for people. So
okay. And if people want to reach out to you directly, work with you, do you offer any sort of retirement coaching sessions or plans or one-on-ones?
I do, if someone really wants it. I prefer to do group coaching, sort of like this, but Winning Retirement Coach is my website. So if someone wants to look at that, but I try to discourage people. I tell them to join a group somewhere. If it's not Rock Retirement Club, it's a community like you have here.
Yeah.
That I just think it's a good way to learn.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, I see someone here posted a link. Thank you for whoever that was. RockRetirementClub.com.
Yes, thank you.
There it is. Another question. You mentioned you'd share your 5 bullet list. Are you able to share the 6 areas of retirement as well?
Yes.
In fact, okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
I will do that.
Great.
I'll send those to you.
All right. Looks like that's it for the questions for now. Anything else you want to touch on, or you want to wrap up? It's okay with you.
No, I would just say if I listen, I go onto Facebook every day to read the questions and your thorough answers on tax questions, on retirement planning questions. If people are interested in these topics, let you know. I'm happy to come back. We can talk about some of the others that we talked about in more detail. Or if they want to pose questions in the, what do you call it? The board, the forum?
The group. Yeah.
In the group. If I don't see it, Andy, ping me and I'll be happy to try to answer them there. And
Okay.
I love to participate in the discussions from time to time.
Awesome. So I'll hold you to it. So going on record as saying you are willing and able to come on again.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And I'll hopefully get some better dad jokes for you next time.
I will as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Kevin. This was fantastic. A lot of great comments. Clearly, people are very engaged, and it's a super important topic. So thank you for your time and expertise tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, all. Good night.